Friends, why this particular topic? Why simulating agricultural processes? Not only in agriculture, even in our daily life, whenever we are challenged with so many obstacles, so many conflicting interests, and also you have got multiple goals, multiple avenues. So in all these multiple scenario, you need some tool, some instrument, some kind of equipment which will help you to take a better decision, which will help you to take an informed decision, because the goals are many, conflicts are multiple. So with these kinds of things, simulation model could be a very, very useful tool to take a better informed decision. So what I shall do in next 30 minutes or so, I shall discuss about what is a simulation model. I know many of you might be working on simulation model, but still bear with me for a few minutes to explain about it. We shall also discuss why a simulation model, what purpose can the model serve in agriculture? What are the basic steps in simulation modeling? What are its applications? I shall show you some of the applications from our own studies and also some of the studies done by other researchers. And also, what are the limitations? There are several limitations. So we shall all discuss these 5-6 points in next half an hour or so. But friends, let me start with a very old story, and I'm sure all of you might have heard this story from your grandmother or grandfather. This is a story of 6 blind men and an elephant. You know the blind men, 6, sometimes probably you have heard about 4 of them or so, but number is not important. They were asked to explain an elephant. How does it look like? So that was the question given to them, and an elephant was brought in, and they started explaining the elephant. As their eyes were closed, so they could not see the entire elephant. The person who caught hold of the tail of the elephant, he said, "Oh yes, I know, the elephant is simply like a rope. A rassi jaisa hai." The person who caught hold of the ear of the elephant, he said, "No, it is simply like a fan." The person who could hold the leg of the elephant, he said, "No, both of you are wrong. Elephants is simply like a tree trunk." And the person who hold the trunk, the nose of the elephant, he said, "No, all of you are wrong. Elephant is actually like a snake. It is nothing but a snake." Friends, all of them were partly right, because they were describing not the entire elephant, they were describing only a part of the elephant. But we all know that elephant is neither a snake, nor a rope, nor a tree, nor a fan. It is an elephant. It is an elephant. Similarly, these 3 beautiful ladies, they were also asked to explain what is the color of this elephant. You can see all 3 of them have got 3 different colors of glasses. So the first one said, "Guys, the elephant is yellow," because he was putting a yellow glass. The second lady says, "No, you are wrong. It is a black elephant." And third one said, "No, both of you are wrong. It is a green elephant." Again, all of us know that elephant is neither yellow, it is not green. But then why all these 3 persons saw the same elephant in different colors? Simply because they put different colored glasses, and they were really observing a different colored element. Friends, when we talk of agriculture, many a times we also commit a similar kind of mistake. We all know that crop yield is actually an integration of several biotic as well as abiotic factors. But as we work in our own area of expertise, like soil science, like climate, like plant breeding, like entomology, pathology, we try to explain crop yield only related to that particular subject area. I many times feel that whole crop yield can be discussed or explained only by soil parameter, which I know is wrong. Similarly, breeders might feel that the whole crop yield is mostly depending upon the variety, which is also not correct. So this is the kind of mistake which we do, the mistake what those 4 or 6 blind men were doing while explaining the elephant. So this is one problem in our way of thinking in agriculture. The second problem comes with multiple goals and multiple conflicts. For example, the natural resources, soil, water, air, land. All of these have got multiple uses, multiple goals. The land can be used for agriculture. It can be used for housing, industry, road, forestry, recreation, and there are n number of uses. Now, which particular purpose the land should be put into? And if you do that, what kind of other conflicts and other trade-offs are going to come? So these are some of the problems. But then you have to take a decision. You have to take a decision based on some information. And then that decision will be acted upon, and that will be resulting into some kind of state of affairs in agriculture, increasing productivity or pollution or whatever it is. So therefore, all of these things create some kinds of problems. Now the problem is, when we know that entirety is very, very important, when we know crop yield is a function of variety, soil, water, climate, pest, diseases, and everything, then why do we compartmentalize? Number one reason could be that if we see entire thing in totality, then the thing becomes so complex like this blackboard, full of all kinds of information, and you cannot make anything out of it. It is so complex, so much mixed up with these things. So therefore, what we need to do is, we have got ocean of data from breeding, from soil, from climate, pest, disease, and everything. From that ocean of data, we need to come out with what we call as rivers of information, which can be put to some use. Ocean cannot be put in some use, but rivers can be put in some use. But again, from that river of information, we have to come out with a drop of knowledge. That drop of knowledge is something which can be put to practical purpose, which can be put to some practical use, and then only you will be able to implement that. You cannot implement the whole ocean of data. You even cannot implement the whole river of information. You can simply implement that drop of knowledge. But then to get that drop of knowledge, you have to start with the ocean of data, then come to river of information, and then finally to drop of knowledge. So this is the complexity in agriculture. Now, as I said, when you have got ocean of data, then your ordinary brain, a brain like mine, which is very, very small and limited, we simply cannot analyze, cannot perceive, cannot articulate all that ocean of data. But fortunately, we have got tools like computer, which can really analyze those ocean of data. It can really come out with the river of information. And then it can really do the distillation of those information and come out with a drop of knowledge. And that's what simulation model can do. It is simply a tool for integration and also for conflict resolution. When you have got so many conflicting goals, then this can really help to come out with the best one option, which will give you higher productivity, higher profitability, and so on. So friends, just one or two things before I proceed. Simulation is basically imitation of a process. It is not the real process. It is the imitation or mimicking a process. Then what is modeling? Modeling is simply quantifying a process, putting some numerical values, putting some numerical value to a process. If it is a plant physiological process, soil process, water process, molecular biological process, whatever process it could be, it is simply giving some numbers, giving some value, quantifying the process. And there, I would like to explain two things for you before we proceed. is our understanding. How do we understand something? We have got two kinds of understanding. One we call it physical understanding, and other one is called as mathematical understanding. What is physical understanding? For example, if I say an apple, the moment I say an apple, a picture of a very beautiful, very colored apple comes in front of you, which is very tasty. You will certainly enjoy having it. And that's an apple. But that is only physical understanding. Physically, you know how does an apple look like. But is it the mathematical understanding? No. Mathematically, if you have to explain an apple, then you really need to know several of the parameters of the apple. Its size, its weight, its nutrient content, its taste, and so many other things, so that you will be able to put numbers, values, quantity for each and every parameter of an apple. Most of the cases, we understand a thing physically. We know 1 grain of wheat or 1 grain of rice, but we know it physically. Mathematically, no. But then when you have to go for simulation modeling, you have to understand it mathematically. How mathematically you can explain a rice grain, how mathematically you can explain a wheat grain, a plant, a tree, an animal, an elephant, all of this. But the mathematical understanding is important. And here, let me quote two things. Probably all of you can write it down, because this will be used and you will be using it many, many times. First one was said by Leonardo da Vinci. I'm sure most of you know about him. Very around, say, 800 years back or so. He was a philosopher, he was a scientist, he was a sculptor. I mean, probably he was such a human being that all could be put in one. Such a great man. And what he said, that no human investigation can be called true science without passing through the mathematical test. If you cannot pass any investigation, any scientific result without a mathematical test, you cannot call it a true science. And second one is, where is actually the person is still alive, who said, science is what we understand well enough to explain to a computer. If you really understand something well enough, very thoroughly, then only you will be able to explain it to a computer, because computer understands only numbers. As I was giving example of an apple. If you say apple, computer doesn't have any meaning for that. But if you give its weight, you give its size, you give it nutrient content, mineral content, vitamin content, water content, all of this, then it will understand, oh, this is what an apple is. So these two probably are very apt codes to describe simulation modeling. Every understanding needs to be translated into mathematical understanding. Every understanding, every object, every substance, and every science should pass through a mathematical understanding or mathematical test. And then only we will be able to assess it, evaluate it, and of course manipulate it. And that's what simulation modeling does. Here is a beautiful picture of Taj Mahal. I'm sure all of you have seen it. This is not real Taj Mahal, this is the photograph of a Taj Mahal. And in the modeling, as I said, that this is a physical representation of a real object. So model is a physical representation of the real object. If you have visited Agra sometimes, just in front of Taj Mahal, you will find there are several shops which are selling models of Taj Mahal. 100 rupees per piece, maybe 200 rupees. And if you want to purchase a very good one, it may be costing a few thousand. So they are selling Taj Mahal, which is of millions and million crores, in 100 rupees or 200 rupees. What they are selling? They are not selling Taj Mahal. They are selling the models of Taj Mahal. They are simply selling the models of Taj Mahal. So therefore, model is simply the one. This is again not Taj Mahal, but this is a model of Taj Mahal. It is just physical representation of a real object. It looks similar, And probably its functions are also like the real object, like Taj Mahal. So it could be made out of clay, toys, and all of you have seen several types of these kinds of models. But there is a second category of model, which we call them symbolic models. This is no physical resemblance to the system, but they depict the system components and their relationships, like computer model. It could be qualitative models, and it could be quantitative model. So when we are talking about simulation model, simulation mathematical model, we are talking of quantitative model. In quantitative model, I shall just explain to you, giving one or two examples. These are simply some mathematical statements. It doesn't resemble with Taj Mahal. It doesn't resemble with apple. It doesn't resemble with rice plant, but it quantitatively explains what the Taj Mahal is, what a rice plant is, what an elephant is, and then it assesses, calculates all other parameters associated with it. Sometimes we use some other terms also beside simulation model or model. So as I said, physical model is physical representation of a real object, like model of Taj Mahal. We also talk simulation model. These are mathematical illustration to compute the behavior of a system. System could be one plant, system could be sometimes one cell, system could be one entire field, system could be one entire institute. This is also a system. Third one is expert system. Expert system is a software which is capable of performing the level of a human expert. An expert like a doctor, for example, or a scientist, a plant breeder, a soil scientist, an entomologist, they are expert. But this mathematical software will be able to act, will be able to guide you like an expert. So we call them expert system. And fourth one is decision support system. These are again some mathematical tools, some computer softwares, which facilitate a person, a manager, for taking a better decision. That's what decision support system. Many times we use these terms interchangeably, but they have got some distinct meaning attached to them. So these are some of the background of simulation model. Why a simulation model? What are the purposes of simulation models? And how different models are described. But now this particular slide is going to tell you what are the basic steps in simulation model. Friends, let me tell you, we have been dealing with simulation modeling for last around 20-25 years or so. And many times the moment we say simulation modeling, people feel this is full of mathematics and it is very difficult to understand, and therefore this is not our cup of tea. They simply get away from simulation modeling, except few. But let me tell you, to become a modeler or to use a model, simulation model, you need not to be an expert in mathematics. What you need to be, of course, an expert of your own subject, but certainly not of mathematics. But you need to understand some of the very basic and simple steps, and the steps are really, really simple. After this particular slide, I am sure all of you will feel very comfortable of what a simulation model is. Let's start. Friends, all of you know that for any cause, for any stimulus, if we put that cause or stimulus to a system, that cause is going to have some effect, or the system is going to respond to that. For example, if there is, say, your mobile on your table, as you are sitting just now, if you push some force to your mobile, the mobile will move, the cell phone will move. So that push is the cause or stimulus. Your mobile cell phone is the system, and the response is it is moving, and that's the effect. And this is universal. This is natural. You give some stimulus, the system will respond. You apply some fertilizer to rice field or wheat field, the crop will respond. We apply irrigation to a field, again the crop is going to respond. So this is the very basic natural phenomenon, cause-effect relationship in a system. Now let's write the very first statement, cause-effect or stimulus-response statement, in another way. If we can say that if you put some input like fertilizer, chemical, irrigation, pesticide to a system, to a rice field, wheat field, then there is going to be some output. Either your yield is going to increase, the quality is going to improve, and so on. So for every input applied to a system, there is going to be some output. The same statement, cause effect, stimulus response, I have written in a different way, input output. And that input and output have got some relationship. The output is having some relationship with the input. What kind of relation? That could be anything. It could be a straight line, it could be quadratic, it could be polynomial, it could be n number of relationships, but there will be a relationship between output and input. Let me write the same statement in another way, in a mathematical. What can I write? That if X is input and Y is output, then the Y has some relation with X. So Y could be, Y is equal to A plus BX, the relation of a straight line. All of you have studied probably in class 10, 11, 12 or so. So Y is having some relationship with X. Output is having some relationship with input. Response is having some relationship with stimulus. Effect is having some relationship with the cause. And this is what the model is. So the model equation is Y is equal to A plus BX. This is model. And this is the relationship with output and input. Now that was only one input-output relationship. But in crop growing system or in animal husbandry system, several of these inputs are working, giving several of the outputs. So in the inputs, we have got weather, temperature, rainfall, relative humidity, and so on, soil, nutrient, water, crop, management, fertilizer, irrigation, pesticide. All of these are applied to model. Model is the crop field. And then there are some output like yield, leaf area index, nitrogen uptake, phosphorus uptake, water uptake, and all, so many of these things. So all these outputs can be related or linked to these inputs by some kinds of mathematical equations. And when you put all those series of mathematical equations in a logical order, that becomes a simulation model. That becomes a simulation model. So that's how simple it is. So many inputs, maybe hundreds, so many outputs, maybe another hundreds or maybe more than that, put into sequentially in the form of some mathematical models, and you come out with what we call as simulation model. One or two more things before I proceed. All of these relationships, X and Y, input and outputs, can be done with state and rate variable approaches. What are state variable and what is rate variable? State variable is the status of a particular substance or commodity or system at a given time. And rate variable is at what rate that particular system is changing. For example, there is one rice plant, a rice seedling, you are planting it today, and the weight of that rice seedling is say 1 gram. After 5 days, that 1 gram will be increased to say 5 gram, because the system, the rice seedling, is changing at a rate of 1 gram per day. So after 5 days, it becomes 5 gram. So the state variable today is 1 gram. After 5 days, the state variable becomes 5 gram, and the rate variable is at what rate that system is changing. So this is state variable and rate variable. Just let us give a very easy understandable example of photosynthesis and respiration. As I told that the weight of rice plant will increase. Why it will increase? Because it is doing photosynthesis. It is producing sugar, C6H12O6. And because of that photosynthesis, the weight of the rice plant is increasing. But at the same time, the rice seedling is also doing respiration, in which some of that sugar, C6H12O6, is also being consumed, producing energy for the plant. So some of the sugar is being taken away. So for example, if photosynthesis is 2 grams per day, respiration is 1 gram per day. So what is the net increase in weight? 2 minus 1, 1 gram per day. So the weight will be changing at a rate of 1 gram per day. So if you start from 0 day, and then go on doing it. So every day 1 gram, 2 gram, 3 gram, it will go on increasing. And at the time of harvesting, the model will tell you what is the weight at 120th day, 130th day, and so on. And you will calculate what is the yield of that. So this is a very simple way of understanding how rate variable and how state variables they work. This is so simple like that. But then these are just one or two examples. When we go on increasing the number of variables, number of inputs, then of course the complexity also goes on increasing. All of you know what is the potential yield. Potential yield is the yield which is restricted by the weather or climate and the cultivar. So climate and cultivar dictates what the potential yield is. But then, so this is what. Then if you want to go one step further, we want to also include water. So in potential yield, we assume that there is no limitation of water, no limitation of nutrient, there is no insect, no disease and nothing. Everything is managed in a very optimum way, and the yield is only function of climate and cultivar. But then when we say no, water is limiting, so then you include water variable over here. Then fourth one, you say no, beside water, nutrient is also limiting. You are not applying sufficient amount of nutrient, so apply that one. Then you also know there are some disease and insect and pest, so put the pest component. And then of course also put economics. You can go on increasing it. As you go on increasing and increasing, the complexity of the model also goes on increasing. But what you get is from potential yield, which is a theoretical yield, you are going to get the actual yield, actual productivity. So you are going to get finer and finer, more and more closer to the reality, actual yield, but the complexity of the model is also going to increase, and you have to provide more and more information at higher level of simulation. So that's what you need to do over there. Friends, models are done at various levels in very different ways. There could be some very simple calculation, as I gave y is equal to a plus bx. It could be some empirical equation. Empirical equation means you have conducted some experiment somewhere. So you have got, say, fertilizer application data or water application data, and you have got yield, say 10 points, 11 points, 100 points. You simply come out with an equation. So that becomes an empirical equation. That is only valid only for that particular field. It cannot be used anywhere else. But then there is mechanistic model. Mechanistic model means where the mechanism of the process is mathematically quantified. Then we call it mechanistic model. But many times every process cannot be quantified. So we use some kind of empirical equation, some kind of mechanistic equation somewhere, and then we combine those. So that becomes the third one, semi-mechanistic. It is not wholly mechanistic, but only some of the parts are empirical, majority of the parts are mechanistic. Mechanistic means, once again, we model or we quantify the mechanism. Say, if you are going to model photosynthesis, you are going to quantify the mechanism of photosynthesis. How much amount of sugar is being synthesized? How much amount of respiration is taking place? How much quantity of radiation it is consuming? How much amount of water it is consuming? All of these, when you put together, then it becomes mechanistic model. And friends, the good point is these mechanistic models are universal. Universal means, as I said, that empirical equation can be applied only for that particular field, but mechanistic model can be applied anywhere in the world. Why and how? Because the mechanism is universal. Mechanism of photosynthesis is universal. The way photosynthesis takes place in USA, in a very similar way photosynthesis takes place in India. So the mechanism is same, but then why the yield is different? The yield is different because the other parameter like radiation, like the cultivar, like the management of nutrient and water and so on, these are different. But the mechanism is same. And when you are quantifying the mechanism, then it is going to be applicable very similarly, whether you use it in India, whether you use it in USA, or you use it in any part of the world. And then, of course, nowadays we are also moving towards use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and several other new tools which will bring into new dimensions of simulation model. So these are just some of the very basic information. Now let's come to developing and the different steps of simulation model. These are mostly these 5 steps which we need to follow if you are going to use a model. One is, of course, development. You need to develop a model, but none of you need to develop a model at this point of time because already several models are available. And most of the models are available freely in the internet. I'm going to describe one model which we developed called InfoCrop model, and you can download that model from the website of IARI, or you can simply write to me or my colleagues. They will be very, very happy to provide you a copy of the model. So first is the development of the model. Then, of course, calibration of the model. You have to check because the model has been developed somewhere, so you have to check for your place. Then you validate, you retest it with another set of data, and then you go for application of the model. And then you extrapolate it from plot to field to region to country and so on. So these are the basic major steps in simulation modeling. As I said, already several models are available. There are n number of models like DSET, Series, Century, DNDC, and also our own model of InfoCrop, InfoRCT, and so on. Now, friends, very quickly, I shall give you a brief information about the model of InfoCrop which we developed. So this is a generic model for annual crops in tropical environment. Of course, it has been developed for some of the plantations as well. It has got 5 modules. One is crop growth process, the physiological process, which was developed by our team leader, Dr. P.K. Agrawal. Then the soil water processes developed by Dr. Kalram. Then we have got soil nitrogen process, and fourth one is soil carbon process, which I developed. And then, of course, crop pest interaction. Our colleague, Dr. Subhash Chandraji, developed this particular component. So these 5, and then, of course, we have got a little bit of economics as well with this. The model is in modular form. Modular form means either you can use the whole model at a time, or you can use part of the model. For example, if you are interested to calculate potential yield, you only keep the weather model on. So it has got switch off and switch on system. You can switch off a particular module like water module, carbon module, nitrogen module, and switch on one module. So here for potential yield, we are switching on only the crop component of it. Then, of course, you can add the soil water balance module. So switch on another module like water one or nitrogen one, or you can put nitrogen, paste, water, and also you can put soil carbon. So when you put all of these models, then of course the models become complete, but it also needs more and more information, as I explained to you earlier. So these are the models. Very briefly about the nitrogen module so that you will be able to understand what exactly we are talking. Friends, all of you have studied in BSc Agriculture that we apply nitrogen through various sources like fertilizer, manure, residue, and so on. These sources will be converted into ammonium. Then this ammonium is converted into nitrate, the process we call nitrification. This nitrate is taken up by the plant. Some of this nitrate will be denitrified, going to atmosphere. Some of this ammonia will be volatilized, going to atmosphere again as ammonia gas. Some of it will be leached out or run off. So this is basically a nitrogen transformation mechanism or dynamics in soil plant atmosphere system. Now you have to convert it into mathematical model. You have to quantify each and every process. So what we do, that say for example, pool A of nitrogen is being converted into pool B of nitrogen. Say for ammonia is being converted into nitrate. And this nitrogen transformation, nitrification in this case, is affected by several factors like temperature, moisture, texture, soil pH, and so on. So this is basically the understanding is, and when you do that, as I said, chemical reaction, so you can put this particular reaction, this particular transformation into some kind of chemical reaction. It could be zero order, where the rate is independent of concentration, or rate is equal to K is the rate constant, or it could be first order, or it could be second order. What we have observed that most of the nitrogen transformation processes like mineralization, urea hydrolysis, nitrification, denitrification, immobilization. These follow first order kinetics. And these are the graphs of that. I shall not go into the details of explaining how these equations are coming, but simply to tell that any transformation process, be it soil, be it water, be it physiology, or be it any, can be captured by some kind of kinetics, some kind of mathematical equation. You need to identify that and you will need to use that. And once you identify that, then that process will be affected by several factors, as I said. Soil factor, plant factor, management factor, climatic factor. So then you go on adding the impact of each and every factor on that transformation. And once you add up all of these, you get the complete model of nitrogen. And then you develop a relational diagram, which factor is related to which parameter, which state is related to which rate factor. And then after relational diagram, you will be able to calculate how much is the nitrification, how much is ammonification, how much is volatilization, how much is denitrification, and all of this. Similarly, for example, water module, again, a very simple one. All of you probably know about this one. See, this is one rice field. In this rice field, water is getting into through rainfall, through irrigation, also through seepage, sometimes capillary rise. And the water is going out of the field by the process of evaporation, transpiration, percolation, or drainage. So these are the way out, some of runoff. And then the plant is also doing its photosynthesis, taking radiation, temperature, and of course, oxygen, other from the atmosphere. So this is the boundary condition of this one. Here again, we need to quantify each and every process and each and every factor. Once you do that, then you will be able to calculate how much is evaporation, how much is capillary rise, how much is crop growth, how much is root water uptake, and all of this. So this was just nitrogen and water. But when you combine all of these things, so this is a relational diagram of the plant physiological part. You put water component into it, then you put the nitrogen component into all these red ones, and then you put the pest component in it. And once you put everything, then this becomes a complete simulation model. Now I'm sure you are getting confused about it. Do not go into details of this, but what I wanted to show that all those simple equation, y is equal to a plus bx, has been put in all these different forms to make a complete model. It looks to be complicated, but it is not so complicated. It is not so complicated. It can be very easily understood and done. Now, friends, to run a simulation model, we need some minimum data set. We call this minimum data, MDS, like weather data, like soil data, agronomic management data, and of course, crop cultivar data. Here in this particular photograph, just for your information, there is a very famous personality standing. I don't know whether you'll be able to identify the personality. A very famous person in this particular photograph, the right side lower one, is standing in this photograph. Of course, you can just check your knowledge whether you can really identify the person who is really, really great. Really, really great. Okay, I shall not put a lot of pressure on your brain. Let me tell you, he is this particular person with a hat is Norman Borlaug, who visited our IRI field, our experimental stand. And of course, another great man is also standing. You may not recognize that person, and here it is myself. Anyway, this is just a lighter side one. So this is what we did actually in that one. And of course, once you have got this information, then you will be able to extrapolate it to calculate in a region, in number of fields, but it depends how detailed you really want to go. Whether you want to take the whole area as one plot, or you want to take all the plots differently and want to simulate for each and everything. And then once we have got all this information, you can club them together and then calculate for the whole state. So this is one study which we did for the state of Haryana, where we collected all the soil information, water information, crop information, and then we could calculate what is going to be potential yield, what is going to be water limited yield, what is going to be nutrient limited yield, and so on. And once you do that, the simulation model, if you run, it will give you whole lot of information on plant growth, development, yield, and so on, soil nitrogen balance, carbon balance, nitrification, volatilization, so on, water parameters, atmospheric parameters, including emission of greenhouse gases, losses of nitrogen. And of course, it gives you an opportunity for extrapolation using some of the tools like GIS, remote sensing, and others. As I said, my friends, before I conclude, maybe another few more minutes, that this particular model InfoCrop, if you are interested, you can download it from IARI website, that is www.iari.res.in, or as I said, you can write to me. I'll be very, very happy to provide you a copy of the model. Just a very quick demo of the model. Once you download the model, then of course the model will ask you to create a new project. And what is a new project? Here you have to give information of variety, location, year, sowing date, irrigation, nitrogen, organic matter, and so on. So you go on giving this information, and I'm sure in most of the experiments, these information are already available with you. So you give all this input data, you give irrigation details, you give fertilizer application details, you give manure application if you have given, and then you ask the model to run, execute the current project. Once you click this particular button, execute the current project, then it will come out with whole lot of information. It will be full of Excel sheet actually, full of Excel sheet. So each and every plant parameter, each and every soil parameter, each and every water parameter, climate parameter will be calculated by this. You can put it in Excel or you can put it in some graphical form. And then of course you have to really calibrate it and validate it to see whether the results are correct for your location or not. And then of course you can. Once you've done that, then of course you can go for various applications of the model. You can estimate, as I said, potential yield and yield gap. You can assess the impact of climate change and pollution. You can also do land use planning, optimizing management of inputs. You can also go for genotype into environment into management, GM interactions, and you can go for yield forecasting, economic feasibility assessment, and n number of uses you can go with this model. Just to conclude, one or two examples of what we did with these kinds of model. For example, we calculated the potential yield of rice and wheat at district level for the whole country. We have done it for other crops as well. We have also assessed the yield gaps. Here just only I am showing wheat and rice, but several other crops also could be done. This is the impact of climate change on crops. My friend Naresh Kumarji works on this very extensively. So he had estimated the impacts of climate change on almost all the crops. So this is another good use of model. Emission of greenhouse gases. My colleagues Arti Bhatia, Nivita Jain, Bidisha, and others, they are doing all these kinds of studies using this particular model. So these are just few examples of how a simulation model can be used. Friends, ultimately you can use it to integrate the knowledge, and that's the main purpose of developing a simulation model. This is a tool for knowledge integration. Whatever knowledge we have generated so far using all the new sciences, plant, animal, soil, meteorology, socioeconomics, and all the technologies, space, sensor, AI, robotics, and so on. So put everything together, develop the simulation models, and then you put stakeholder goals, what farmers need, what policymakers need, and so on. And then you also use the resource characterization, what kind of soil, what kind of weather, water, and so on. And then the model will give you the whole list of information. It will tell you options for crop and management. It will tell you production resources requirement. It will give you output, yield, income, employment, and also it will give you information about environment and climate impacts. So this is in totality what a simulation model can do. But friends, every good thing also has got some limitations. These are few of the limitations of simulation model. Like, it is difficult to mathematize all the biological processes. This is because of our incomplete understanding. So all the biological processes as of now is not easy to mathematize, to quantify. Second one is, as I said, incomplete understanding of our plant, environment, and management interactions. If you do not understand yourself, suddenly you cannot quantify it, and suddenly you cannot explain it to a computer. That's the second limitation. Third one is developing a crop or animal model is difficult. Developing is difficult. But then, as I said, there are several models already available. You need to identify a suitable model, calibrate it, and validate it. And then, of course, it needs calibration and validation. But alone doing everything is difficult. We need a team of plant physiology, soil science, climate science, agronomy. Of course, not everybody, but then certainly not one person. It has to be a team. It has to be a team. This is my final slide to tell you before I conclude why I say we need a team. You know, to do any good job, you certainly need a team. All of you have seen this one. And as now I'm in Maharashtra, this is very, very popular. This is very, very popular. But to reach up to this particular height, my friend, you need a team. Alone, this boy or none of them alone can reach up to this. Here is another, the team is not good, so they are breaking down all the time. But here is a very successful team. So the team is the one which is very, very crucial. Second one is the team with best player doesn't win. It is the team with the players who play best in a team, they only win. And these two photographs of, I think, 3 years, that World Cup football. You know, Argentina and Germany. Argentina lost, Germany won. Though Argentina had players like Messi. Similarly, Ronaldo was also there in Portugal team. But Messi's team didn't win the match. The Germans team, which didn't have any famous player like Messi, but they won the match because they were the team with the players who play best in a team. Here is a team, Argentina. They have got best player, but they could not play good in a team. So this is what the team makes. And this is very much true for simulation modeling. So friends, let me conclude saying that models are holistic, universal, and knowledge-based tools for global as well as local application. As I said, why global? Because the process is universal, like photosynthesis. It can be used to improve efficiency and environmental sustainability. It needs quality data for calibration and validation. But it is difficult to capture all the complexities of biological systems. So we certainly need a team effort. So make a team to use it. And then, of course, there are several other limitations of a model. As in computer case, we all the time say that garbage in and garbage out. If your inputs are not correct, if those are not sound, then the outputs are also not going to be sound. So therefore, you have to use simulation models with caution. And that's what I wanted to share with all of you today about simulation, simulating agricultural processes. Friends, this was, of course, a quick deliberation of simulation modeling, but my whole purpose was to give you a glimpse of what simulation model is. And when agriculture, particularly Indian agriculture, is passing through several of the difficult complexities, several of the challenges, several of the conflicts, multiple goals, then you certainly need a tool like simulation model, which will guide you, which will guide a scientist, guide farmer, and also policy makers to identify what is the best option to use and to do agriculture, research, management, policy, and so on. And my understanding is that in times to come, as we are going into a new era of agricultural development, a time is coming when we will be using more and more of such tools like simulation modeling and information and communication technologies to find out better solution, to find out more informed solutions. Thank you very much, all of you, for your patience hearing. Particularly my thanks to the colleagues from other ICAR institutes and universities who have joined, and of course, my very special thanks to my own colleague from NIASM, Baramati. Thank you all. Thank you very much.